Here we are.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Beth Hildenbrand, and this is All Booked Up. And today, our special guest is author J. Craig Rice. And I am going to quickly go to Facebook and make sure that we are where we're supposed to be. We've been chatting a little bit and getting to know each other. So, this is going to be a terrific interview. I hope you are all going to enjoy it. I don't know why this screen has to block me out when I do this, but it does. So, just give us one quick second here and we will. Okay. Here we go. Yes. Make sure we're where we're supposed to be. But, yep, I see us. Okay. Now I can go back to where I'm supposed to be. And there we are. Okay. So now we should be able to see any comments that come up. All right. So your latest book is My Two Wives. Why don't you
Correct.
tell us a little bit about it?
Well, it's actually the second of a trilogy story. Um, it I don't know where the idea actually came from, but it's you know kind of a romantic comedy, a little bit more on the serious side, but basically the main character Chris, it's written first person view. He always struggled with a lot of things in his life. During his high school years, he was extremely overweight. And it destroyed a lot of his self confidence. And then he wound up getting a job, meeting a really good friend who was in health and fitness, and actually helped him get rid of all the weight, become very buff. But he just never really clicked with girls. By the start of the book, he'd only had 3 dates, and all three of them were just complete and utter disasters. And so he was just so confident that he would spend his entire life, alone and desperate. And his two best friends talk him into going out one night, you know, and so he walks into, this bar that he's been to before, and two of the most beautiful women he'd ever seen in his entire life come walking in. And they, he just immediately wants to go up and talk to him and try to, but he just doesn't have the nerve to do it. And so he kind of gets forced into going up to it. And so he decides, like, okay, I'm going to go do it. So he goes walking through the crowd, trying to make his way to where these two girls are sitting at. And he gets trapped, by the crowd. And so he turns to change directions, and one of the girls is standing right there in front of him. And she immediately comes on to him. And uh, excuse me, she immediately comes on to him and has this, puts on this ploy where he is going, him and his, her friend, and it's Cassie and Stacy, are going to, be his wife that night to, get rid of all the guys that keep hitting on them. So the story kind of starts right there. And, now Cassie is the type of girl that, she hates relationships. She hates, complications in her life, but she does enjoy sex. So she will go out and she will pick up somebody, and spend the night with them, and then, never see them again, because that would be a complication. And so she decided that, Chris was going to be her, not, man for the night. and they start talking, and one thing leads to another, and what was supposed to be a one night stand with her turns out to be a lot more than what it was. And Chris manages to break through this barrier that she created. And not only does he wind up making Cassie fall in love with him, but also Stacy.
Aha.
And so Cassie and Stacy had been best friends since they were kids, and they'd always had these plans, like they're going to find the perfect husband for each one of them and get married and have their family and everything like that. And they realized, like, why do we even bother? Why do we need to look for somebody else? Chris fits the mold. We'll just both marry him.
Well, that makes sense.
So I mean
If
that
you don't mind sharing.
yeah. So that was how the first book worked out. And then the second book, which is my latest, is everything, leading up to them actually, getting, the marriage. And it involved, coming out to their parents, letting them, know it's like, hey, not only, are we going to marry Chris together, but, we're also going to marry each other, because I mean, they've always had that love for each other. They just never truly explored it. And they're like, why not? So it's dealing with that, dealing with, an ex-boyfriend that is possessive of Stacy. And, also Cassie is trying to get her business off the ground, which, Cassie also produces pornography. She makes, a porn channel. So it's just, the whole thing, is what, the second book, and also Chris coming into what he really is, rather than, what he's always let his fear make him.
Well, this sounds like fun. I'm going to have to get this book. We have some people with us. Catherine from Memphis, Tennessee. Kenny from Pennsylvania, and our darling Nina. Hi, Nina.
Hello, Nina.
I love that woman. Uh, so, does anybody have any questions? Okay, I have a question for you, Craig.
Okay.
Do people that you know pop up in your books? I mean, do the characters in your books relate to any people in your life? I mean, certain qualities or parts of their character.
I like to think that there's some aspect of myself and Chris. I also take some of my inspiration from my dad, for Chris's personality. His technical skills, everything like that. I mean, I think that a lot of, the personalities do tend to come from people that I know, but I can't say it's like, oh, I get this from this person or that, that from that person. But I honestly believe that when I'm writing a character, somebody that I've interacted with at some point in my life, kind of works their way into the personality of the character. And my focus is always on the personality. I spend very little effort on describing the characters, because I want the reader to imagine the character to look how they want them to look. But I want the personalities to be, I mean, the personalities do tend to come from, what they, from other people that I've met in my life. But I can't point out. It's like, oh, this person's personality, came from this person.
I like to think a lot of personality comes through the dialogue.
Yeah.
Nina wants to know what inspired your book.
Honestly, with my two wives, I'm not really absolutely certain what inspired that particular book. Maybe it was a little bit of, my fantasy. I don't know. I know that I mean, what human male doesn't have, a fantasy of two women.
I've
But
yet to meet one.
yeah, but as far as actually, you know, uh, what inspired this particular series of books, honestly, I don't know. I know that my first book, to answer Catherine's question, I'm not a full time author. I wish I was, but I have written 5 books. But the very first book, The Right Life, what inspired that book was a lot of my dad, in that one. And it, really, sorry, my train of thought just totally derailed. Um, but, what inspires books, I mean, anything could inspire, me to write a book. I'm working on a side project right now that has absolutely nothing to do with, what the type of style of writing that I've done in the past. But what inspired it was, you know, uh, a, you know, a movie possibly, but, it's kind of a supernatural type story that's been rolling around in my head for years. And since, most of my life I've played role playing games, I think that that's part of where that inspiration came from.
uh, I do. I always have a half a dozen things rolling around in my head at one time. I'm working on a new Kane book, mostly because Josephine drives me crazy about it. She's always yelling for a new Kane book. And I have a new horror book going, and I've also, I write poems. Just I can't I can't sit down and write a book of poetry. It doesn't happen. It just A poem will pop into my head, a couple lines will start popping out, and I just start scribbling it down, and that's where the poetry comes from. So how do you do it? Do you have a couple things going at one time, or do you just concentrate on one at a time?
I've always, because I'm not a fast writer, because I want to be a perfectionist. So I do tend to focus on, one book at a time normally. And when I do have an idea, I try to jot down notes for it, and hoping that, when I decide to come back to it, I remember you know, uh, what the basis of it was. But, um, it's, my mind never shuts down. I just cannot stop thinking about, what I'm working on or anything like that. So I just, I always have those, thoughts like, oh, this, would be a great idea for a book. You know, they're just always popping into my head.
I My favorite saying is I'm not dumb, I'm distracted, because
Yep.
people always say, Beth, what? Yeah, I something's always rolling around up there, and yeah, I'm always staring into space, and people think, what goes on with her? No, I'm not dumb, I'm just distracted. Always have a book or something rolling around up in the brain. Well, good morning, Theodore. And Nina says, which books do you enjoy writing the most?
Uh, to be honest with you, this is one of those funny things. I'm writing erotica, right now. That's what I've been, that's, everything that, I've written has had an erotica flair to it. To be honest with you, that was never what I wanted to write. I wanted to write science fiction or fantasy, sword and sorcery, something along that line. But for some reason, the erotica stories just came out. And I do enjoy writing them, but I think I would, if I could find that right story, and I'm hoping my side project will be that right story to actually transition away from erotica into, more of paranormal, supernatural, without, having actually any major sex in them. Yeah, I'm not going to say people aren't going to hook up, but I don't want to do, I don't want it to be descriptive, like it is in my erotica books.
My Kane books, they're the supernatural books, but they do have a bit of kink in there. I love stories. I'm not a big romance fan. I do enjoy reading it, but it's yeah, there's some, it can be nasty.
Yeah.
But I've never written full out erotica before. I've never given that one a shot. I tend to go for more the paranormal and the occult. But you should give it a shot. I would love to see what you come up with.
Yeah, I'm hoping, because the when I started writing erotica, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, big turn on, naturally. But now, I'm working on the third book of My Two Wives, and I'm getting bored with it. At a certain point, you just kind of start feeling like it's wash, rinse, and repeat. And if I'm getting bored, if it's getting to that, it's getting boring to me. So that's why I'm having such a hard time finishing the third book. And so because I don't want it to be that way. I don't want the reader, it's like, oh, it's just another of the same thing. I want it to be something that's, I want the reader to, start the book and can't wait to get to the end. And if I'm starting out the book, excited and then getting bored before I get to the end, then I'm not doing something right.
I started to feel that way with Kane, and so I started doing other books,
Yeah,
and
that's
then it was like I missed them. I started missing the characters, and I had
yeah.
to go back. And
And that,
it was like a homecoming kind of when to go back to them. So you know what? Do your other thing, and then maybe you'll want to go back to it.
and that's it. I mean, I love Jim Wright, who is in the first book, and Lisa Coleman and Carmen, and they're all in my very first book. I love Chris, I love Cassie, I love Stacy, I love Anna, and even a new character I introduced in the third book of me. I love all of these characters, and it's not the sex about, it's not their sex lives that I love the most. It is them, the people that they are. But it's just feeling like, I'm still wash, rinsing, and repeating. So that's why I'm stepping away.
Yeah, it does. It's when it feels it's not fun anymore. I think sometimes the readers feel that way too. They can feel your that you don't have as much joy in your work. I guess
Yeah.
if that makes sense. That I was reading a book by J.A. Stone about a month ago, and I told him I enjoyed it so much because I could tell how much fun he had writing the book. I think the author's fun with what they do comes through in the book.
Yeah. My second book, My Two Wives, The Wedding, I actually had a lot of fun writing that book. And, it took me more than a year to get to where I was actually having fun with that book again. And then once I got started, I went back. I'm notorious for this is why it takes me forever, because I'll be, like really far into the book and then realize like, no, I need to do this, which means I need to start all over again. So I'm like seriously notorious about doing that. And so I, went back and, with a new idea and started the book all over again from chapter one. And I had so much fun with that one little change that I wrote from beginning to end, in about 2 months' time, to where it took me almost 2 years to get to, that where I had that first thought, or where I had that thought and had to start all over again. And I had a lot of fun. And honestly, I think that, The Wedding is far better book than the Proposal, which is the first subtitle for My Two Wives. And but I know that the reader, if they don't read the first book, the second book's not going to make as much sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, how do I get them past that first book to get to the really fun book?
That's true. I it's I often feel like, yeah, you try and make the second book where it can stand alone if somebody hits it first by accident, but you always have to read the first book first to get the
Right.
second book. It's too hard not to. Maybe for some people they can pull it off, but for me, yeah, if you don't read Cain and then you read Faith first, it's kind of like, hold it. What does this mean? What happened here? How
Right.
did I get there? So yeah, I totally understand that. You, it it's a lot more fun for the reader to go in sequence than it is to go out of sequence. Although, if they hit book two first, you know that they're going to go back and buy the first book if they like the second one.
That's true.
So at least you know you get the first book sold then. But for me, it's never really been about sales. I just want people to enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the one of the weaknesses of, I think, not just myself, but the many thousands of authors out there is marketing. You
Ugh.
know, I absolutely hate trying to market my book,
Oh God, yes.
and so you know, it's I want to know what people think of my books, not because I want the reviews. I want to know what they think because it's like, what can I improve on? What can I change to get better? Did you enjoy it? That's the most important thing. Did you like it? If you didn't, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I don't expect everybody to like my books. But if you liked it, I want to know it.
I got the weirdest review the other week. Some woman wrote, "It's not what I was expecting, but I'd like to hear more." Okay. She gave me a 5-star review. It wasn't what I was expecting. Okay. Well, at least it was a good review, I guess. It was strange, but it was good.
Yeah.
I always say I'm a storyteller. I'm not a great author, but I'd like to be a good storyteller.
Yeah.
I have all these stories in my mind that I want to get out. And I think the biggest part of being an author is being a good storyteller.
Yeah.
I'm not a great editor. I'm not a great, I couldn't format to save my butt. Uh, See, no cursing. I said but, uh, but yeah, I would like to hear people say, "Hey, you told me a great story."
Yeah. I started out, what, because I've always been creative, but I started out playing, role playing games, Dungeons Dragons, Vampire the Masquerade, Star Wars, and, dozens of other types of role playing games that are out there. And when I originally started playing, I was the player. I wasn't the person that, ran the game, the game master, the dungeon master, whatever you want to call it. And it was fun as as being a player, but the idea of running it just always appealed to me so much more that I started, asking my group that I was in. It's like, hey, can I try running a game? And shortly after that, I became the only person that was running the game. And probably 30 years of my life, was spent, creating the story for the other players to participate in. And during that, all during that time, it's like, oh, I want to write a book. I want to write a book. But I always kept telling myself, I've got the skill to do it, or I've got the talent to do it. I just don't have the skill to write a book. And what was my change for me, which was around 2014, 2015, was that I read I purchased an independent author book that was so horribly bad. I told myself I can do better than that. You know, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, "Well, why don't you?" I'm like, "Why don't I?"
Yes.
And that's how The Right Life came into existence. Although I still hate that title with a passion. I wish I would have come up with a better title.
That sounds good to me. But that's it's true. I have read some stinkers, and you think, oh my goodness. But I have also read some brilliant things. I don't think I've read a published book in, well, since I've started doing this. And I think somebody told me what it only what 3% of all traditionally published writers make any money at it. But you just have to go out there and take the chance.
Yeah. I'm not going to be famous. I have no delusions about that. But, I'm doing what I like to do. And,
That's
you
it
know,
right there.
I've got, as a writer, I've got two major weaknesses. My grammar sucks because I didn't pay attention in high school, and I edit even far worse than my grammar. Because every time I go to edit something, it's like I spend more time rewriting than I do editing. But, so anybody that decides to read my books, I'm sorry. I hope that the story is good enough that you can overlook my bad editing, my bad grammar.
That same
Yeah.
here.
Um, but the my point is, Nina asked who is my favorite author. One of my favorite authors out there is Stephen Jay Gould, Stephen Gould. I forgot what his middle initial is, and I'm actually reading his book all over again because I've read it like probably 12 times. It's called Jumper, and I'm reading it right now because I just needed something else that wasn't, along my genre. Um, and as I'm sitting here reading it, I'm spotting grammatical errors. And this is a national published, they made a movie off of this book, although the movie sucked. The movie is horrible and it has nothing to do with the book. But, I'm noticing grammar errors. I'm noticing, editing errors. And I'm like, my God, this is somebody that had a movie based off of his, made off the premise of his book. And there are mistakes that I make in this book. So, I mean, again, if anybody decides to read my book, I hope that you enjoy it. I'm sorry about the mistakes. But even great authors make mistakes.
Yes, they do. I remember finding like 3 in a Nora Roberts book and thinking, aha.
Yep. Somebody missed it.
Yep. And you know what? Right here is a good time to plug Miss J.R. Byers and the Crafty Quill. She is a wonderful editor and proofreader. Everybody needs to go check her out on Facebook. Okay, JR, I got your plug in there. Love you, hon. I'm here to help. So sorry about that, Craig.
No, that's fine.
It was just good timing. But
no,
JR is wonderful with this stuff, and she's also a very good writer. I love her books. Back to what we were talking about. Yeah, traditionally published, and you know what? Nobody is going to make any money from Amazon.
no.
I'll tell you what, these you can. Oh my gosh! Well, I think I make 30 cents a book or something. It's just ridiculous what you get paid from Amazon. So if you're looking to be an indie writer to make money, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah. I think last month I made like $2.88.
Yeah, this is something you do because you love to do it, not because you're looking to become rich. Definitely not. ugh. I tried to do journals, and this struck me just because I can never find a journal I like. They have all these stupid covers on them, and the inside is never what I want. And day timers too, where because you can ask Nina. I forget everything all the time. If I didn't put my coffee post up every morning, I'd forget what day it was. So I decided I'm going to make these day timers and journals, and I ended up having to charge $18 a piece for these stupid things until Amazon decided what the price had to be. And I think that was with me making like 50 cents a journal or day timer. And I was like, well, this is ridiculous. I'll never try this again.
Right.
So, I'm not selling any. Who the heck's going to pay $18 for a stupid journal? It's a blank book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of a losing proposition, but I have one now. I have a day timer that I like. It's set up the whole way I want it. Well, at least I have what I want. But yeah, that was a losing endeavor. Amazon does not quite work the way you want it to sometimes. And that's enough rattling on about me and my losing propositions. So, let's see. Okay, I remember what my question was. Okay, what's one thing about yourself nobody knows? Just a silly little factoid.
I'm my own first cousin.
Okay. Do we want an explanation on that?
Oh, I actually get a kick out of explaining this one.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So here's the rundown. All right. So I am the firstborn child, but my older brother is my uncle. My sister is my cousin. My dad is my uncle. My mother is my aunt. I'm no relation at all to my youngest brother and sister. And I'm not related to my father either.
Okay, I think you have a book right there.
No, I mean it's a little it's a little sadness out of my past. When I was 4 years old, my mother passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So my biological father turned over the four of us kids to my mother's family. Now my older brother, who is same mother but different father, you know, which is how I become, the firstborn to my father. You know, he was adopted by my grandparents, making him my uncle and also brother to my mother and my dad. Now, my younger brother and myself were adopted by, my mother's brother, thus, making, him, my uncle, my dad, and me, my own first cousin. My sister was adopted by another brother of my mother's, thus making her my cousin. My biological father went on, got remarried, had two more kids. Now, because we were all adopted, legally, I'm not related to them. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had that happen in my family too, to be quite honest.
So it's one of my favorite stories to tell,
A
when it comes
cousin
to
of
something
mine.
like that.
Wow. Well, bless your heart, honey. That is very confusing, but I'm sorry about losing your mom so early. That's got to be
Yeah.
hard.
I'm sure it was. I mean, we're talking 50 years ago. So I mean, time passed on. I do have a few memories of her, but they're very vague. And you know, time doesn't heal wounds, but it does make them easier to deal with.
I lost my dad just 6 years ago, and I'm still trying to cope with it. Losing anyone is hard, And I was a total idiot for a couple years. I mean, I just closed myself off from everybody. And it does take a long time to recover. And like you said, time, it doesn't, it just, it helps you deal with it. You don't
Right.
really get over it, but you learn how to deal with it, I
Yep.
guess. And yeah, I'm just, yeah, it still is horrifying. But, well, I don't know how to explain it. Death is not easy to explain, but
No.
it's not. And, well, I'm sorry.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I just took that to a weird place. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I,
been 50 years, so it's just, it is, I don't think about it very often in a negative way anymore. When I do get to go home, those rare occasions nowadays, it's too expensive to go anywhere. But
yeah.
when I do get to go home, I always try to make sure that I do stop and, visit my mother's grave.
I, uh, I should not say this. I really shouldn't. Okay. But my father was cremated. This is a goofy story. Uh, Now my stepmother, bless her heart, she's a piece of work. She has his ashes in this container that they gave her at the funeral home. And now I have offered to get her, a vase or whatever she wants to
Right.
put his ashes in, but she seems to think that they're loose inside this container, and so she keeps it in there. And every time I go visit my stepmother, she asks me if to go say hi to my dad. And somehow over the years, it's become known as talking to the Tupperware because it looks like a Tupperware container. And so every time I go over there, it's like, have you said hi to your dad? Yes, I've said hi to dad. And then I'll come home and I'm just silent for a few hours afterwards. And I'll come home and the kids will be like, "Did you have to go talk to the Tupperware today?" Yes, yes, I have been talking to the Tupperware.
I mean, it's not funny, but it's funny.
Yes, exactly. It's just it's something totally horrifying that has turned into something totally ridiculous. That we go talk to the Tupperware now. But bless her heart, yeah, she's turned into a bit of a drunk these days, and you go talk to the Tupperware. But we love her, and she's just always going to have him in the Tupperware. So it's ridiculous, but it's funny, and we love the lady. And
Yep.
now everybody knows one weird factoid about me. I go talk to the Tupperware. Okay, and on to better things. So I am really hoping that we get to see this project from you about the sci-fi or supernatural or
Yeah.
um,
I've been struggling with the first chapter because I know where the book is going to go. I know, but I had to start out the book in a way to, I mean, I introduced the antagonist. I needed to introduce the antagonist in the first chapter, you know, uh, and try to also explain something about, the protagonist in a way that, but I didn't want it to be, a narration of, what is going on and what it, and so, the first, chapter of the book takes place about 500 years ago. And then it's going to pick up in modern times, from chapter 2 on. But I want that first chapter to be perfect so that the reader is like, oh my God, this is, cool and interesting. So I have been struggling for about 2 weeks on just trying to get chapter 1 done, and I think I finished that yesterday. So now I just need to finish up the chapter and then move on to the actual story. So
good luck.
yeah, it's just been something that's been rolling in my head for such a long time that it's like, I'm going to go ahead and address this. I'm going to go ahead and work on this.
I do that. That's about where I have the new cane. I'm into the first chapter, and I'll fiddle with it and fiddle with it and fiddle with it while I finish the book I'm working on. And Catherine wants to know, what are other options rather than Amazon? Well, there's Barnes and Noble and BookBub and Lulu. Have you heard of Lulu?
I've never heard of Lulu.
Uh, I don't know. I find my books, if I Google myself, I will find my books all over the place and have no idea how they got there.
Yeah,
Abe Books and all kinds of places. And I'm really, well, there's Goodreads, but I think Amazon and Goodreads are kind of,
partnered.
yeah. I'm really not sure. You can, I don't know, look things up, I guess.
Yeah,
Like,
I know that there are, there's some of my books that are being offered by, secondhand retailers. And I think what they're doing is they're actually, because their prices are higher than what my prices are on Amazon. So I think what they're doing is the intention is, they sell the book, if somebody's dumb enough to buy a hard copy of my book. And then they'll order it from Amazon and then, make their profit, accordingly.
yeah, I've seen mine on eBay, all kinds of weird places. And yeah, I think they either get them from Amazon or I don't know, maybe they pirate books.
I mean,
Is that
unfortunately,
possible?
that wouldn't surprise me either.
But through legal channels, I know, yeah, I've done Barnes and Noble and Amazon and Goodreads. And I think that's about it. Okay, next question. Ah, I think we've hit everything I had on my list. Is there anything that you wanted to add today?
Not that I can think of. Nothing that comes to mind.
Okay, well, we have some news. Let's see. Catherine Bailey, who's here. Hi, Catherine. Her book, Nemesis Life is But a Bad Dream, has come out in paperback. Congratulations, Catherine. So, everybody be sure to check that out. Anna Casamento Arrigo has a wonderful new poetry book that I shall be reviewing any day now called It's Okay. Everybody needs to check that out. Taggart Wren, Freer of Souls, has come out on paperback as well. This week at By the Author, we have K.C. Savage as our author of the week. Josephine Wrightson is our author of the month. And next week, yours truly is author of the week. So stop in and check me out. That should be lots of fun. Who knows what I'll come up with. And our guest next week here on the show will be Adina Gray. So you don't want to miss that. You're very welcome, Catherine. So I guess we've had a good show. What do you think?
I think it went very well.
I do too. I had a pretty good time. It's been nice getting to know you.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect, so I was a little bit surprised, and it went I was very comfortable and enjoyed it.
Thank you. Other than my little sidebar into La La Land, it went pretty well. So, everybody, thank you for coming to this show, and I want to wish everybody happy Valentine's Day. And we will see you next week here at All Booked Up. Yes, I know the name of my show. Oh my God. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, you stay here. I'm going to hit the button. Okay, end stream, yes. Okay.